Anyway, it's a good experience.
You're good
At
to go,
least.
Saul.
Okay, Coach Saul, go ahead.
Nawala antok natin doon.
Oo.
Oo nga.
Wow. Wow.
Share ko lang, Coach, yung ano mo yung live feed mo sa Facebook.
Alam ko, biglang nag-zone 5 si Coach Burns eh.
Dami eh. Moy, Jeric Albainia.
Jerry.
It's a Filipino. Go ahead.
Sigas. Sige, pagkagagawa naman sila ng ano, matatanggal ko agad kasi isa-isa na eh.
Naka-live na tayo, Coach?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Share ko na lang
You can
siya
start
with
now, Saul.
this one, no? Just now. Okay, share. Guys, thank you again for tuning in. Sorry for the technicalities. So, I'll share now my PowerPoint again and restart. Coach Pari, hopefully you can reshare, host enabled for screen share.
Yeah, you're good to go.
Thank you, Coach. So, PowerPoint. And so going back, okay, thank you again, guys, everyone, for tuning in. I'm Coach Saul. My partner with Endurance Lab is also here, Coach Moy. And I'm a faculty member of the University of Santo Tomas with the Sports Science Department. And last year, I coached the National OCR team. I'm one of the 4 coaches. And I focus more on the running. So I'm the running performance coach. And Coach Moy is now taking over. And he is the running proficiency coach. So he focuses more on the run form. And I collaborate more with the load. Okay. So as the moderators shared earlier, I'm based here in Qatar just for a couple of months to be with my wife, and sakto inabutan lang ng lockdown with the pandemic, but hopefully everybody can jumpstart and innovate at this challenging times. Okay, so moving forward, disclaimer. So as I said, back in late 2016, I stumbled upon Stride, and it was a challenge where to order. So of course online with their shop, and we were talking to someone based on Hong Kong, and it has to be shipped in Manila. And then fast forward to today, I saw that a couple of coaches in Manila are starting to sell Stride power meters, and of course I'm a firm believer of power. So we contact them, and now we are now one of the partners of Stride Philippines, so we can get it through us as well. Okay, so this is not a sponsor, this is not a paid Stride seminar, but it's of course in general in power you can use other power meters, but of course we support Stride because it's been used to some extent by a majority of elite runners out there, okay, and triathletes. So why power? It's the most physiological marker of performance, as we have discussed earlier. So you have a couple of things. One is it's work rate, so it's work over time, so how much work you can do in a specific time, okay, or it's force times distance over time, okay, or force times velocity. So in terms of running, how much force you are putting on the floor, okay, and how fast you're gonna turn your legs, okay, and that will equate to power. And when you look at it, it's not the highest amount of force, okay, and not the highest amount of speed or cadence. Okay? It has a middle ground, okay, and you have to know which one will work for you. Okay, everyone is very individual and unique, and so although the research supports this specific cadence at your given time or for that given time on your fitness, you have a self-selected cadence that's gonna be optimal to you. So we'll discuss that more furthermore later. Okay, so I copied a couple of slides from Dr. Andrew Kogan, and of course, he's one of the pioneers in power. He developed a lot of metrics for power-based training. Okay, and when you look at it, when you go with threshold, okay, here with lactate, okay, critical power is your power at anaerobic threshold or power at threshold. Okay, and Stride calls it critical power. Okay, or in cycling, the term is FTP. Okay, so you can call this FTP if you will. Okay. Another is when you compare power with gas, with the gas analyzer. Okay. So power output, which is in yellow, orange, and VO2 or gas. Okay, and you can compare that it's very close to each other. Okay, so there's a linear relationship with stride and VO2. Kindly for the others, kindly unmute your mics, please. Thank you. Okay, so moving forward, of course, this is something that's related to performance. So power influences performance. So here in running, it's gonna be in minutes per kilometer, or here in this presentation, it's meters per second. Okay, and as you can see, the higher the power output, it will of course affect your speed. Okay, so there's a linear relationship across power, speed, VO2, and of course threshold. Okay, so what are our learnings with cycling? Okay, cycling power meters have been in the market for a very long time. Okay, and as you can see in this graph, and I'm sorry, seen in this graph that when you climb uphill, okay, power, if you are maintaining power, okay, that will affect your speed. And of course, towards, if you're maintaining power towards when you press that climb, your RPE will go up. Okay, and of course, heart rate will also go up. Okay, so heart rate and RPE are what we call as input sensations. Okay, those are sensations, experiences that we feel relative to the effort that we push. Okay, so the output is of course power and speed. Now, as we go downhill, okay, on the bike, power will also diminish because we're not pedaling as hard as you were during the climb. But of course, speed will go up. Okay, because the gravity is pulling you with your bike. Okay, and of course, heart rate will go down as well as RPE because you're resting, you're not pedaling, you're not putting much effort. Okay, and of course, if you're pedaling constantly on a flat surface, power, okay, will be the same if you're consistent with your pedaling, and of course, heart rate will have a slower increase as well as RPE. So those are our learnings with cycling power meters, right? And you can apply the same in terms of running. That's the good thing. So if you are a power meter user in cycling and you shift and start using it with running as well, then you can use the same concept with your runs. Okay, so it's very useful. I've seen it very useful with running when the terrain is, I'd say, rolling, okay, or hilly, because I can now target a specific wattage and compare it, like let other pass you. I won't blow up in the hill. I can push again at the latter part of the race. Okay, so it is really a pacing tool. Okay, so of course now I'll go back to this slide, and as you can see now, if you test,
Coach Saul,
yes, coach.
Coach Saul, I would just like to ask you something. You've mentioned that it's reflective also on the power in the bike. So when you measure the power in the bike, so how different the values it's going to have when you, I mean, is it reflective of the, like, let's say for example, the VO2 max or lactate threshold in the bike power that we can have?
Of course, it shouldn't. For example, if your FTP on the bike is 200 watts, okay, it's not gonna be the same that it's also 200 watts for your running FTP or running critical power. So you have to test again for running as well. But there's a relationship on it that what's your power at VO2 max, what's your power at threshold, okay? That's gonna be the same system. That's physiology in general.
So they have the same system, but there would be some differences. It's like the heart rate also.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
definitely, as you can see now, with your heart rate in running and your heart rate in cycling, your tendency would be to have a higher heart rate in running, right? And in cycling as well, it's lower heart rate. But in running, you'll see that you can push a higher wattage for a long period of time as compared to cycling. So I'd say that cycling is more efficient. You don't need a higher workload, okay, or power output to do work for a prolonged period of time because you're working with pulleys, okay, with the gear. But of course, in running, it's upper and lower. You create more heat, and you have to disperse that heat. So heart rate has to go up. Circulatory has to push harder. Okay. But of course, now with the advent of technology, with shoes, with carbon infused shoes, it's more efficient now with technology. So as we go along, that's another thing that I want you to compare. If you have a running power meter, you can now compare which shoe is faster for you. It's just by feel or pace, but you can now see with which shoe will now require less watts for the same speed. Okay, you can do it with your training as well. You can experiment. Okay, so which is more efficient in a way. Okay? So thank you, Coach Bernard, for that. I hope that clarifies a couple of things also for our viewers.
Yes,
Okay.
go ahead, Coach Saul. Thank you.
Okay, so of course, I want to go back to this slide, okay, that we created, and as you can see here, that your either formal testing or training or other events as your test, that's gonna equate to data, okay, and that data can be confirmed. Like if at the start of a 10K, this is my effort, and then as I push along, my RPE will go up. But my question will always be, if I maintain this wattage, if I maintain that load, okay, can I hold it for the whole 10K or the whole 21? Okay, that's why RPE is always gonna be there. You should always ask if I can push this power output or pace. Okay, now with that wattage, what's gonna be my heart rate response? Okay, because we know that what you feel, emotions affect heart rate, and how hard you push also affects heart rate. The next question would be, what if I tweak my cadence? Okay, if I push a higher cadence on the run, will my power output go up, or will my cadence affect my heart rate? Okay, will that lower my perceived exertion, or will it increase my what I feel? Okay, my RPE. Okay, maybe if I'm running at this certain wattage, for example, 150 watts, okay, my minutes per kilometer is, for example, 5 minutes per kilometer, okay, but my RP is only 7 or 6, right? What if I increase my cadence from 170 to 180, okay, it might increase my heart rate, but my perceived exertion is gonna be the same, okay, then it's good, okay, my heart rate is, even though it went up, I can push the same, okay, and my power output and my speed went up as well. So that's good for me. Okay. So moving forward, okay, what are the pros, okay, of having a power meter, okay, on the bike and on running? Of course, it's urgent. Okay, you don't have to wait for GPS signals to arrive to your watch because it's now Bluetooth, okay, or and plus. So it's faster. Okay. And if you do sprints, okay, heart rate will be slow to increase relative. So if you're starting an interval at the first couple of seconds, heart rate will just steadily go up, right, in relation to RPE. Then when you hit that, now you just have to hold it. But here it's instant. Okay, once you start that interval, it's gonna be 150 watts. Your target's 150 watts or 180 watts. It's gonna be there, boom, and then you just maintain that. Okay, so of course you can now test and test and test. So now you can test equipment. Okay, you can test now environment. What if I hold the same wattage at a different time? For example, I'm gonna race in a hot, humid environment. Can I hold the same wattage? What if I do it at a lighter time of the day? Okay, definitely we know that environment affects performance. Okay, so you now test shoes, apparel, environment, hydration, whatever. Okay, and of course, okay, that's for the environment. You know that you will now stop guessing, and you know that this will affect my performance. Okay, I can now compare my previous 10K. I'll show you one presentation later. My previous 10K, and then a couple of months ago, I do another 10K. Okay, and how much did I improve? Okay, in terms of that. And of course, now you have a dose versus response. If I do this, okay, like how many percentage in this zone will I improve on this side as well? For example, if of course the role of specificity, if I train at threshold, then of course I will improve my threshold. If I train more on endurance side, I will improve the endurance as well. And of course, if you want to improve your VO2 max, then you're gonna do a couple of VO2 max intervals like 5x5s, okay, or 5 sets of 5 minutes at VO2 max, and that will improve your VO2 max a couple of months or weeks from now. Okay. What are the consequences? Of course, one is, of course, it's data heavy. Okay. So if not, you're not a data heavy person, then of course, a coach will help you on that end. For example, here I'm sharing you my my power file with the 21-kilometer run. Okay, this was back in 2017. So majority of I'm presenting is 2017 because that's my most active in triathlon. Okay, and when you can see it's stochastic, so the data is very much variable. Okay, so it's not as easy to interpret as when you look at power is pink or purple. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm colorblind. So, but that's power. Okay, and red is heart rate. As you compare heart rate and power, okay, heart rate tends to be flatter. Okay, it's not as erratic as power or cadence or pace. Okay, so I'd say that heart rate is normalized. Okay, it's easier to see, and you can see better trends with heart rate as compared to power. Okay, a second, of course, it costs. There's a certain cost to that. Okay, power meters are expensive, but when you compare cycling power meters with running power meters, it's like 1/3 of the price. Okay, or half the price. Depends on what brand or what model you're gonna buy with a cycling power meter. So, of course, there's a cost, but it's not as expensive, I'd say, with cycling power meters. Okay, and of course, it's a cruel mistress. Okay, on a bad day, okay, you're trying to push yourself. Okay, you know that your power will not reflect on it. Okay, it will not sugarcoat your performance. Okay, but of course, on a good day, you'll be happy if you're targeting those wattages or values. Then definitely you're gonna be happy on that. So I'd say it's a pros. It's not always good with data. Okay, so some people, I tell my clients, just record the data, just run outside. I don't care what's gonna be your power or what's gonna be your pace. Just record it and upload, because me as a coach, I need to see that.
Coach Saul,
Yes, coach.
we have a question from one of our viewers right now. Actually, it's Coach John. So he was asking if the arm swing, does it affects power? We know for a fact that the running economy relies on the upper body when it comes to running. So I think this is a very good question.
I think it will affect, but I haven't read on the literature on that. Majority of the measurements of the stride power meter comes from the foot. So maybe when you compare that with arm swing, with the VO2 max or gas analyzer data, and you compare now, what if you take out arm swing and you focus on it, maybe we can see. But as I can see you now with running, I haven't really looked into that. Okay, but I think it's gonna have a factor. Okay, with form. Okay, there's this one metric with the power with running power meters. They call it form power. I'll show it to you later. With form power, you now know that that's the cost of you standing, because running is a single leg sport. Okay, when you land on that foot, that short amount of time you're a bit standing, right, or a single leg stance. That stance has a cost, and that cost is your form power. So you can now compare on different runs if your form power or that form power ratio is actually improving or is the same, even though your power output is increasing or your pace is increasing. Okay, I'll show you two of my 10Ks, and when you look at it, my form power ratio is close to one another, but the pace is higher, and the power output is higher. Okay, I'll show you two different 10Ks later. Okay, and thanking you for the question, Coach Mike. Okay, so moving forward, so again, this is a new flow chart, I'd say, so that we posted a couple of years ago. So now with the data that you have, okay, you can now identify strengths and weaknesses. As a coach, right, a sports science coach, I know that weight is a major factor in running. It's a power to weight sport. Okay, so you don't see marathoners being bulky, right? But you see sprinters that way, but they burst power for a short period of time. Okay, so they're very powerful. So power in terms of in terms of running, weight is a major factor, especially for distance. Okay, you can now see here with data efficiency, as we have discussed, form power. Okay, movement patterns as well. Now with Coach Moy as our proficiency coach, we can now look at form. Okay, how can you can do drills that you can improve your form. Okay, and of course economy. And now you can hit the weights and do functional training, improve your anti-rotation for running or the core, and of course improve those weaknesses, and that will lead to better performances. Now on the power side, of course, that can give you proper training zones. Now you can train specifics for your event. For example, I'm gonna do a 70.3 or a full Ironman for a client. Then definitely, of course, I'm gonna focus more on. So, okay. So now I can now focus more on. Thank you. So now I can focus more on a specific intensity and duration for that target event that I'm focusing on. Okay, and that will improve, of course, performance as well. Okay, so one thing I like about data, okay, this time of course with power, is you can now compare your phases. Okay, for example, this is my own data back in 2017. Stride uses two key power outputs. Okay, one is your 3-minute power and one is your 9-minute power. The 9-minute power has a direct relationship with your aerobic power. Okay, so your endurance power. So the point is, if this is where I was starting from back in December, January, first part of 2017. Okay, and then as I was moving along, like here, I did an Olympic triathlon here, and now it improved by that much, as you can see in the graph. Okay. Now, when you look at now with the red, I was focusing on a 21K. Okay. Right after I'm gonna show you my 21K on April 2. So that this data was only up to April 1. As you can see, my 9-minute power increased from pre-competition to my first specific, which is I was focusing running because that's one of my weaknesses. Okay, I had to focus on this weakness, and then I remember at the latter part of this season towards 70.3 Cebu, I joined Coach Moy's swim academy, and I focus on my swimming because that's another of my weaknesses. Okay. So of course, with anything on testing, okay, I just wanna coin Coach Tim Cusick, and he shared here part of the improvement in peak power is mental. The ability to suffer is important. As I shared earlier, I have to compare my 3-minute power, okay, and my 9-minute power. So as I hold this certain wattage for a prolonged period of time, okay, I need to be mentally prepared as well that I will suffer. At the latter, like for example, at 6-minute mark or the 7-minute mark, I know that last 2 or last 1 minute, it's gonna be, okay, I'm just gonna be pushing, okay, bahala na, susuka ako, alam ko, but that's the point, okay? I just have to be mentally prepared and be ready for that kind of pain, okay? So, this is my April 2 21K run. This is actually my, this is the Run United series. So this is back in 2017. When you look at this one, I know it's data, so many numbers, but I made it into segments, into quarters, okay? So first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and you can now see it here on separate quarters and on the side as well, right? When you look at my data here, the first quarter versus the second quarter, okay? Power output wise, average power 140, 147, 153, and then 161. So the power trend here is an upward trend. I know color blue wise, that's your pace or minutes per kilometer. Now let's look into that. My first quarter, my average pace was 6 minutes 21. Okay, and then it was at 5:55, and then it was at 5:34, and then it was at 5:20. So you can see it was a negative split. I can now target, I can pace my efforts, and I can strongly finish. Okay. And then at the end, I still have a bit of energy, and I was sprinting towards the line because maybe gaining a couple of seconds. Okay, so this was for me a good pacing. I did this race to check my power and how I will use it to pace myself. Okay, because I know
Question.
that yes, Coach Adel. Ay, Doc Adel.
Sorry, sorry for interrupting. I'm just looking at this slide no, on the graph. I see dips in the power.
Yes, Doc.
There, yeah. What are those? Are those just glitches
Those dips, Doc,
or?
I was either walking for a while and grabbing some water
Yeah.
on the power stations.
Okay. Yeah.
So those
Because
were
I
the dips
noticed
where
your right. Because I noticed that your heart rate wasn't really naman that wasn't decreasing as much. So more likely we're just pausing for a while, no? Dun sa
Yes.
power. No? I mean, yeah,
those
running.
were
Okay.
those
I
were
get
the
it.
dips where yes, Doc. Yes, Doc. I was
Got
grabbing
it. Thank you.
water. Yep. Because sometimes with
Right.
those kinds of
Thank you.
races, the
Right.
water stations are long and there's cramp with people. So
Right.
there's
Right.
some delays from time to time. Thank you,
Thank you,
Doc,
Coach.
for that question, Doc. So as you can see, it's more of that. And now as me as a coach, I can see that those dips, if those happen, I know that my client was resting or getting enough water. And of course, when you look at that, when you look at this data, you have that trend, upward trend in power. And of course, when you look at here, there's a downward trend in terms of pace. Okay. So this was a good test race for me. So now that you got a power meter, what should you do now? Okay, so first one is, of course, set up your zones. Honestly speaking, the zones here is just gonna be a tool for you to communicate better. For example, person to person, you know that zone 4 is threshold. So everybody is familiar that zone 4 is gonna be your threshold. Okay, so if I'm gonna do zone 5 work, it's VO2 max. So now it's a common language between coaches and athletes that you're referring to the same type of intensity. Okay, the next question will be, how long can you hold that power output, or how long can you hold that zone? Because that's important also, especially for example, a full Ironman. Okay, you know that for a full Ironman, you want to push zone 2, or if you're a fast 70.3 racer, then definitely it's high zone 2 or low zone 3. So now it's a easier term that when we talk, okay, it's a good communication tool that we're pertaining to the right intensity, or we're at the same page. Okay, so of course set up your zones, but of course before you set up your zones, you need to test yourself. Okay, so of course you're gonna find your optimal cadence. You can now pair your stride power meter with your Garmin watch or your other smartwatch that it can be connected like Suunto. Okay, but of course here you can now determine your optimal cadence. Okay, that's very unique to you. But of course now me and Coach Moy, we've been seeing that 180 steps per minute. We use the metronome of the watch of Garmin, and you can now really feel that beat and get into a rhythm for your runs. Okay, so now you can do a test. Okay, so Stride recommends a 3 to 9 minute test, or a 3 and 9 minute test, and a 3 and 9 lap test. Okay, honestly speaking, for me, as in my personal opinion, okay, I want to do time as compared to laps. I know some of my clients here who are watching. I like to do workouts based on time, because the body is based on time. For example, from your food in between meals, it's based on time. How much sleep you have, it's also based on time, of course, in quality as well. But the body is based on time. It's not by distance. Okay, so I want to test to see energy system wise in time. So that's why I went it here, first one for me, if you're using a stride power meter. Okay. Second, of course, some people tend to, I'd say, be accustomed to distance or by laps. So it's easier to see that way. So you can test you can do a 3 and 9 lap test and put it in the Stride app, and you can now get critical power or auto critical power. Okay, that's one of the good things with technology now, that like other apps can now tell you that you improve your FTP. Okay, and now you can tell your coach or colleague, my critical power or my FTP improved. Is it true? You can now go back to the data or test yourself and see if it really improved. Okay. And of course, for me, my next question is how long can you hold that? Okay. So you can do now a 10-kilometer race, okay, or simulation. So a 10K will tell you if your 10K is less than 1 hour, okay, but it's not less than 45. So it's between 45 to 1 hour, you can use a 10K, okay, as a test for your critical power or FTP. But if you're a fast runner and your 10K is below 45, then you use a 15-kilometer race to test how long can you hold that, because definitely your 15-kilometer race will fall in between 45 to 1 hour because your 10K is faster or lesser than 45. Okay, so pick any of the 3 tests here and you can get your critical power. So once you know your critical power, okay, this is from Andrew Kogan. When I was starting with power, I remember Stride got him as one of their consultants, and he posted this one on that day. So you can see here, this was early 2017. He posted it in 16 hours ago. So I had to save this photo, and now I'm using it. Okay. So as you can see here, it's a percentage of critical power. Okay. 80% less than 80% is endurance. Tempo is 81 to 90%. Okay, 91 to 100 for threshold, and 101 to 110% for critical power for VO2 max. And anything above that, like speed work on the track, then it's gonna be more than 110%. Okay, so this is a 5-zone model, so it's easy to understand. Okay, easy to grasp, I'd say. So less zones, sometimes it's easier as a good for starters. Okay. Now with Jim Vance's zones, it's at the 7-zone model. Okay, and when you look at it, they're like the same graph that table that we use. Now you have a specific duration per zone. Okay, so if you want to target endurance and you get the most out of the adaptations that you want from endurance, then you want to target 81 to 88% of your critical power for around 2 to 3 minutes, or 2 to 3 hours. So definitely this is for your long runs. For 21K, for example, your 21K is roughly around 2 hours, or maybe for other people, they're faster. Okay, maybe it's a 25-kilometer run. So of course, as you go higher, like shorter distances, you go with a higher zone, a higher intensity, closer to your critical power. Okay, for example, a 3K, then definitely it will be at around, for some people, they're very fast, then it's gonna be at their VO2 max. Okay, and there's a high relationship with elite runners with their 3K run with their VO2 max. So this is my profile. So good thing about Stride is if you use that one, you can create a profile with your smartphone online, and you have this profile. And of course, I blurred my data, okay, for privacy's sake. So, and now it will auto compute your zones. When you look at the zones here, it's very similar with Dr. Kogan's critical power zones. I think they tweaked it a bit and they adapted it. And now they're fully utilizing, like for example, threshold was at around the same, but intervals or at zone 5, sorry. So it was a higher, they're now using a higher zone 4. Okay, so this was now at zone 4 was their VO2 max. They made it easier to understand. So before with Dr. Kogan, zone 4 was his VO2 max here. So I think it's relatively the same by around 5%. They increased it by 5%. Okay, so you can also use this one as a guide. Okay, and you can see here that before the lockdown, I was running here in Doha. Okay, and you can see here how much time and how much stress scores you will have for a specific run. Okay, so good thing about training and racing with data, with power, I can now compare, for example, 2 10K runs here. Okay, this was March 7. Okay, around roughly 1 month in between those 2 10Ks, I think. Okay, and my critical power here is 178. Okay, so 178 watts, and I was maintaining 515 minutes per kilometer. Okay, So the average watts is 157, and the form power is 43 with a form power ratio of 2.8. What's form power ratio? It's the ratio between your form power and power out. Okay, so it gives you how efficient you are. The lower the number, the more efficient you are. So there, I have a couple of runs when I was reviewing this for my presentation. Okay, I had a couple of runs that it was at around 3.35, 0.35. So that wasn't an efficient run as compared to this one, which is only at 2.28. Okay, so I can see that this is a good run for me because it was at a lower in terms of efficiency wise, because the FP ratio was lower. Okay, now when you compare now with another run, another 10K run, okay, it only registered 9.82. It was the Run Rio leg 1 in MOA. Okay, and as you can see here, my form power ratio was higher. Okay, so it wasn't as efficient as the previous run, but when you look at it, my pace was better, it was faster, my power output was faster. Okay, so maybe at a higher duration at threshold, I need to work on my efficiency. Okay. So those are the takeaways from the two 10Ks. Okay, I can now compare data from one point to the other. And when you look at the stress score, it was at 99 as compared to only this one, which is at 82. Why? Because when you look at time in zones, or TTIZ, total time in zones, you can see here that majority of the work was only at zone 2. Okay, for this particular run, I was at 52 minutes. But when you look at this one at close to 50, okay, I was pushing more at zone 4. Okay, or VO2 max threshold. Okay, for some people. So
Coach Saul,
yes, coach.
Coach Saul, sorry. We have some questions. So I would just like to remind you guys that the questions would be entertained and will be answered by Coach Saul later on after his discussion. So he still has 5 minutes to
I think
go.
two slides left, coach.
Yeah. Okay.
A
So all
couple
the
of seconds.
questions, guys, wait for it. They will be answered accordingly later on. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, Coach
thank
Saul.
you.
Go on.
Okay, so of course, my takeaway is one with data, okay, that you can see with your watch, you can manage intensity. Okay, I'm not a fast runner, as you can see. That's one of my weaknesses, but I'd say that now I can pace it better because I know that I can only do this much. Okay, and then after a certain part of the race, I feel good, I can now push. Okay, so it serves like a limiter. The problem with that limiter theory is that if your zones are not updated, okay, then definitely it's gonna hold you back and really far back, and you won't be pushing that hard on race day. Okay, so my takeaway is 1 month before your big race, test. Okay, double check your critical power. Okay, and for example, there are days like, for example, 1 week before or 21 days before your big race, you test again. Okay, double check and then reestablish your zones. Test if you can maintain this one, and of course, it's gonna be performance based. But on race day, I know I'm confident that I can do it because I did it on training. Okay, now I know that with data, I can now focus on form. Okay, I can ask my partners, okay, my colleagues, that they can tweak my form, help me with my form, and lower that form power more. Okay, and make me more efficient. Okay, and then of course, as I discussed, you can now optimize spacing, okay, at a certain extent, and definitely improve your performance on the long run. Those who are very interested, just a short plug. Okay, I wrote an article about running power on Training Peaks back in 2017. They posted it after my stint with Cebu, and as you can see here, I used WKO as data analytics. There's now a newer version of this, especially for Mac. You won't be able to use WKO4 anymore. So they have updated this. They have better models, and you can now use running power with the newer version of WKO, which is WKO5. Okay, and I was able to really dive into the details more with this software, with my coaching as well. Okay, so just a glance with this graph. I know there's so many numbers again and so many lines, But when you look at here, this is ground contact time, so that's green. And when you look at here, it's a ratio between power and ground contact time. And this is the same file earlier with my 21K. And you can see that my ground contact time had a trend going down. Okay. And when you look at this one, my power to ground contact time was going up. So I'm in a way better efficient. Okay. In that article, with this article, I shared a phrase from Dr. Palladino, who was helping me at that time with running in power. And he was very happy because I was targeting, I think, 140 something watts to 148. And then when I averaged my whole run, my whole 21K, my average power was 2 watts higher than his prediction. So at the first half, I was pushing 143 watts. Okay, my target wattage, then I think it was 145 to 148. Okay, and then at the latter part, my power output was higher at, I think, 150 something. And when you average it, it was 150. So the prediction is there. Okay, it told me that if I push at this wattage like 145, it's good conservative wise. Now I can empty the tank on the latter part and finish strong. And this is the same file as this one. Okay, it's the same file as this one, but deeper graph, more data, more analytics. I can now review my file, review my client's file, and see that, okay, where was the problem? If he followed the plan, like for me, I followed Dr. Palladino's plan, and it was well executed for me, and I had a good race. I broke my 2-hour barrier in terms of 21K, not the full marathon, so to speak. Okay, so those are some of the information about running power. I hope it's a good introduction to this, and I can now answer your questions if there's any, coach.
Thank you so much for that great presentation, Coach Saul. You know, as triathletes, we always crave for reference points, especially how to improve the continuation of the swim, bike, and run.
Yes,
You
coach.
know, we are already aware how effective the power meter on the bike, on how is it going to predict on how are we going to run. So this is definitely a very, very good information for all of us, especially for the people that don't use the power meter right now in the run. So we have some questions, but these questions, we will be entertaining this after the presentation of our